I'm saying that when people meet resistance with their ideology, and they have the choice to either change their ideology or destroy the resistance, they tend to just destroy the resistance and keep the ideology.
Most people's ideological positions shift significantly, if not radically, as they come to apply their ideology to their world as an adult and meet contradiction and resistance. How much of an ideological evolution have you experienced in your adult life, and what are some of your more significant foundational positions you have come to dismiss, and what made you dismiss them?
Okay, so that's a few questions, and I'm probably going to have you repeat the back end of that question, but let me address the front end of it. The front end of the question said, as people grow into adults, they begin to question their ideological foundations, and they shrug some of them off, was essentially what I was getting from that. I disagree with that assessment. I think that most people ever question much of their ideological leanings, nor do they look for a consistent worldview at all. And this is one of the major problems, I think, is going on to this day with men, is they simply don't think. And this creates a massive problem. I don't believe for a second that there's a large quantity of people who are very introspective, nor care if their worldview is consistent, nor care if the arguments for their worldview is consistent. I don't think that they give two shits, and I think that that applies to most people across the board. Can you repeat the rest of that question for me?
How much of an ideological evolution have you experienced in your adult life, and what are some of your more significant foundational positions you have come to dismiss, and what made you dismiss them?
So some of the things that I've dismissed outright that were part of the more alt-right platform would be race realism, for instance. I couldn't reconcile that with critical race theory. I also couldn't reconcile that with logic. So because I couldn't reconcile those two things, and they also went against my version of universal ethics, which comes from Christianity, I was forced to abandon it, dismiss it altogether as essentially just being untrue fundamentally. I used to be a lot more libertarian when it came to the belief structures around homosexuality, and I rejected and abandoned that completely too, as I recognized that the universal ethics that I follow with Christianity reject same-sex activity categorically for a reason, because of how damaging it is to society as a whole. So would I say that as I became an older adult, my ideological positions have changed? Yeah, I think that they have, but I'm also a very introspective person, and I like to think about these kinds of things. I don't think for a second that most people do, and I don't think for a second that they do much introspection, and I don't think that they really think past, go to work, get paycheck, go home. That's just kind of my take. Having worked in the private sector like everybody else for as long as I have, most people that I run into are not introspective at all.
All right. Do you
actually, if you don't,
yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I was actually thinking about building on this one a little bit, just to kind of ask a little bit more, because the question, the way it's framed is, as people go through adult life, they meet resistance and conflict with their ideology, and that can cause people to change their positions. But I think what you're saying is that most people, despite the conflict and resistance that they may meet in their adult life based on their ideological positions, they'll still hold to those. And
yeah, that's precisely what I'm saying. I'm saying that when people meet resistance with their ideology, and they have the choice to either change their ideology or destroy the resistance, they tend to just destroy the resistance and keep the ideology. That's been my experience.
Do you think, from your perspective, that's more of a newer kind of modern thing that's becoming more and more common?
No, I think we live in a fallen world, and most people are spiritually bankrupt. And I don't think that a lot of people do introspective thinking. I think they do external thinking. They're always thinking about the environment and the world around them versus thinking about what their role inside that environment is. And I think this leads to all kinds of prime cause issues with people's ideologies, And I think that this has always been the case. Warfare, factions, and tribalism is nothing new. And resistance to people's ideological belief structures is certainly not something that's new. And generally, when the ideology meets with resistance, the ideology doesn't change, they just destroy the resistance.